FromSoftware Games have been a huge part of my life, as I'm sure you're aware if you've been following my journey through this channel. Their games have shifted my perspective of gaming forever and have pushed me further and further into trying out video games that actually challenge my personal skills and capabilities as a gamer. I've played and platinumed almost every single one of their games on my PlayStation and have spent more than a couple of playthroughs into these games. These experiences have always had a proper monopoly, but with the release of the Elden Ring, the food chain has been changed, and I'm sure that many of you are conflicted as to what games is the best in the franchise. Well, I've got my opinions on it, and so this is my ranking of all of the FromSoftware Soulsborne titles, Sekiro and Elden Ring included. Dark Souls 2 is what everyone awaited after the immense success of the original Dark Souls. I was absolutely entranced by the trailers and everything, though the main issue arose when I actually started playing the game itself. It seems that FromSoftware took a page out of the Ubisoft's book and downgraded the hell out of the Dark Souls 2. Though that didn't sully my enjoyment of the game. It was rather the infamous amount of poisoned swamps and plague-ridden areas, the bullshit bosses that were samey or straight up reskins of other bosses, and some bland level designs. The game does have some fantastic additions to the formula though, such as the building variety being better than ever, the best UI by far, has nice convenience changes, consuming multiple souls at once for instance, has better online and deeper covenant, and a popular arena. However, these changes aren't as indicative of the game's success as the DLC, The Crown of the Sunken King. The old Iron King was great too, but it wasn't half as good as the Sunken King. This one had some great bosses, namely Elana and Sinch. The gang squad was decent too, but this just got frustrating fighting another mob instead of actually well-made bosses. All in all, this is a much weaker game than Dark Souls 1. Demon's Souls is an absolute first game that kickstarted FromSoftware's Soulsborne series of the video games. This is the game that kickstarted the infamous difficulty scales and the unforgiving world. The game was released in the era where games were becoming easier and easier. More quick time events, more button mashing, more typical open worlds with nothing to do and boring level designs. Demon's Souls came in and quickly challenged everything. This was a game for veteran gamers who enjoyed the challenge, and I personally enjoyed the life out of this game. However, this isn't nearly as close to the quality of the rest of these games. Demon's Souls has a bunch of issues, such as the abundance of areas which had tedious drawbacks such as the plague effects, poison swamps and archer-filled mines that can really ruin the fun. It also had issues with the difficulty scaling, where you were being thrown into a completely bullshit area like the Twin Man-Eater layer. Though you can choose where you want to go, so that freedom is very nice. The first time I stepped into the Anor Londo, I realized how long before Dark Souls 3 that FromSoftware had already perfected their vision of what they wanted to create. Dark Souls is a monumental game, a game that truly revolutionized the industry and spawned a whole subgenre of its own. A game that drove players to challenge themselves and push themselves to the edge against insurmountable obstacles. Dark Souls is probably the closest FromSoftware had come to perfection back in the day, and this was due to the few reasons. First off, the difficulty wasn't artificial here by any means whatsoever, other than one of the swamp areas that Miyazaki had a huge boner for. The game's difficulty depended entirely on your playthrough and choices, and the same can be said for the game's bosses. Dark Souls has a huge scale in terms of the world, and it brought together elements that perfect storytelling through the vagues of dialogue and NPCs' interactions. Though it was after Dark Souls 2 that FromSoftware truly found the stride in my opinion. Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is by far the most unique game in the entire franchise. Sekiro brought such as a huge amount of new twists and mechanics that it didn't feel like Souls game in many ways, aside from the difficulty of course. Where you had to roll around, Sekiro now had a jump button. Where you had to manage your stamina, Sekiro got rid of that. Where you had to chip away at the enemy's health bar, Sekiro actually had an insta-kill feature in the forms of the posture bar. This feudal Japan-based fantasy game throws you into the world from the get-go. Sekiro has more cutscenes and story-based events than any other game in the franchise. It also features the most grueling combat mechanic that forces you to learn the enemy patterns and parry their attacks perfectly. Not to mention it had stealth as a main feature, which gave you a variety of options to bypass the mini-bosses or take out mobs silently. Sekiro was an ultimate form of evolution and twists that everyone had been yearning for, and a fantastic addition to the Soulsborne games that couldn't have been made any better. Dark Souls 3 is by far the most gut-wrenching and emotional story that FromSoftware has ever told. The game's world spits out the emotion right out of the gates, ever since you first arise in the Cemetery of Ash. This game exudes the aura of a broken, corrupted and damaged world. This is the first Dark Souls game that I've played, and it truly shifted my entire perspective of gaming, simply because of how insanely massive this world was. In Dark Souls 3, every time you think you have explored an area to its fullest, there will be another secret hidden deep within for you to find. Not to mention the level design here is so deep that it can lead you to places you've never been before, and yet you will find out ways back to the bonfire quite easily. The best thing about this game, however, are the bosses themselves. The bosses in this game are main source of storytelling. They have their own cinematics before the fights begin, and then they are quickly dripping with the atmosphere through their movements, their attacks, their boss arenas, and even their soundtrack. They're also grueling in difficulty, yet they aren't unfair at all. Dark Souls 3 has the most refined movement out of the Souls games when it released, which made it parrying and rolling much more accessible as a gamer. This is a straightforward game that will challenge you to the fullest, but you will love every second of it once you invest into this world. The Lovecraftian gothic horror world of Yharnam. It what makes Bloodborne a contender for perhaps the best game ever made. This is a game that lives up to its potential. A cosmic horror lands full of putrid, vile creatures and corrupted bosses. The things that made Bloodborne stand out was not only its unique setting but also gameplay. It's a Souls game through and through, however, it focuses on rewarding your aggression rather than your ability to learn patterns and timing. Everything just works amazingly, from weapons moveset, variety in weapons, less focus on builds and more on the action, horrifying mobs and godly bosses, and some truly horrifying environments. The DLC also brings in more content for you to dive right in. It features two of the absolute best bosses encounters out of any of the games I've played, Ludwig and the Orphan of Kos. The world of Bloodborne is the true show stealer here though. Every single pathway interconnects with another and makes this beautiful maze-like world that you can keep exploring through without any tangible confusion. This game is straight up nothing but a masterpiece. The thing that makes Elden Ring the best game in perhaps the 10 to 20 years is simply the gameplay mechanics known as options. There are limitless options in the Elden Ring. Ever since you first start out in the world, the game just throws you into the Limgrave and says go. There's nothing holding you back, no linear path that you're forced to follow unless you want to. Just like Dark Souls 3, if you think you've cleared an area, then there's literally always going to be more to find in the Elden Ring. First off, the scale of this game is simply immeasurably large. You're thrown into Limgrave, which you can explore to its fullest for at least 30 hours. Then you have Caelid, which will require the same kind of commitment. The same can be said for Liurnia of the Lakes, and the Fire Giant Mountains, and many more. Then you also have areas under the map too. It's just absolutely crazy how big this game is. It's probably the main reason why I still explore the lands between and find new areas. There's also an untouchable amount of builds variety here. This is the most expansive build variety that you have in any Soulsborne games, or maybe any game in the world? You have so much to look for and so much to find, so much to explore and level up. Unlike linear pathway from other Souls games, Elden Ring implores you to explore and level up so you can basically become a god and one-shot the bosses. This is also the most accessible game in the franchise, bringing in an easy mode in the form of summons, spells, broken ashes of war, and even more broken incantations. Not to mention there's always the classic wrench gameplay if you're looking for a classic Souls experience. In any case, Elden Ring is a game that brings a little bit of everything for everyone and makes sure that this is the largest game that has probably ever been made. Please do consider supporting me on my Patreon to see these special videos earlier, including with the additional rewards. And check out my playlist of all the similar special videos that I have already released. I'm very proud of them. Do let me know what you think of them as well. Please leave a like, subscribe as always, and have an amazing day.